Hi, and welcome to Style POV. Today I'm joined by Fatima Ess, the founder of Poeticize Your Presence, a system that blends silhouette analysis, custom color palettes, and style energy archetypes into a holistic approach to create your personal style story. Fatima brings a richly layered perspective to the world of style. An Oxford-educated journalist, she spent over a decade interviewing cultural icons from Beyoncé to Nina Simone to Matthew McConaughey, and she previously worked with Vogue. As a published author and brand storyteller, she's also helped leading brands refine their voices and narrative. Observing how public figures construct their aesthetic and communicate identity through visual storytelling has deeply influenced her work, shaping Poeticize Your Presence into a system that bridges psychology, aesthetics, and narrative craft. Having grown up as the only child of color in a rural English village, Fatima developed a deep curiosity about identity and aesthetics and believes that individuality and differences are beautiful threads in one's personal narrative. Her approach isn't about boxing people into rigid categories, but about seeing each client as a muse and helping them tell their own story through clothing, creating wardrobes that feel intelligent, authentic, and joyful. So without further ado, let's dig into it. Fatima, I'm so excited to have you on the Style POV podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm so excited to dive deep into Poeticize Your Presence. I think it's a wonderful system that you've created. Would you mind giving us like an overview of your system and how you view like the client as a muse?
Sure. So Poeticize Your Presence, it's born of like decades-long interest in style and fashion, but also like it came together really quickly. I've only had my system up and running for a matter of months. And it involves three intersecting layers. So there's silhouette ID, or what I call silhouette ID, which is about body geometry, it's about your bone structure, sort of like the physical reality of your face and body. And then there's color analysis. I've sort of built on more traditional systems like the 12-season system and sort of made it more nuanced. So a person in my system can be a blend. Their home season might be summer, but they could be a blend of two different kinds of summers, for example. And then the third layer is style energy archetypes, which are based on the Jungian archetypes. So that really obviously takes into account your personality, how you move, what you believe in, what you're about, because I think that's sort of like a crucial part of how we dress, why we dress, how we present ourselves to the world. So that is what I call the style energy archetype, and there are 12 archetypes based on Jungian archetypes. With each client, I see the client while I'm working with them as my muse, because the person obviously sort of books their consultation with me, they send me bunch of pictures. There's a lot of trust involved with that. It's quite a vulnerable thing to do. They fill in a detailed intake form, and then for the sort of week or so it takes me to put together their analysis, it's like they're a part of my life,
Yeah.
And my background is in writing. I'm a journalist. I've written books. So it's kind of a similar feeling to when I'm trying to get an article just right or finish a book, where there might be a time when I'm thinking, this just isn't quite there yet. It's not quite coming together. And that's how it feels with the client. Sometimes, some people are easier to place than others. Sometimes it's like, yeah, she's a spring, but I'm not sure which spring, and I have to like sleep on it and get up the next morning. It's like, and you get that light bulb moment. It's like, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you send their report out to them, and I mean, technically you might never hear from them again. So it's like you're sort of super involved in this person, and then you let it go. Luckily people are usually very responsive, like, oh my God, thank you, I feel so seen. But it's a very interesting way of working.
Absolutely. And it's a vulnerable thing on both sides. Like you're really digging and trying to develop their character and figure out who they are and their most like kind of authentic self. And I love that you use that storytelling aspect of it, because I also love to write. I write a lot, and it's like building a character. And sometimes like you're 3 chapters in and you're like, this character is almost there, but there's something missing. They need this like extra spice, or they need this inciting incident, or they need to have this backstory that I'm not seeing. So it sounds like you really use storytelling or creating this authentic character that matches the energy of your clients while you do it. Do you want to talk a little bit how you use storytelling in that way?
Sure. So you're right. There's like definitely an element of storytelling, really from start to finish. I think the quote I've got on my email signature is something like, "Your personal style tells a story before you've even spoken. What story do you want to tell?" Or something. Yeah. Because we don't have to wear fancy clothes or wear makeup. Like these are all choices. Like all we really have to do is not be naked, right? So how we choose to present ourselves, it's so deeply personal. How we choose to wear our hair, and so I think even people who say, "I don't care what I wear, I'm not into style," that is a statement in itself. You're putting something out there. You're out in the world, like say you just literally go out onto the pavement people are going to like look at you, even if just in passing, and sort of make judgments and draw conclusions. They might decide to speak to you because of something about your presentation. So it's really about owning the narrative. You know, my system is not about, okay, you are this body type, you must wear these lengths, and you must wear this color palette, because not everyone wants to look harmonious. Like, we're assuming people want to look conventionally attractive and harmonious, but maybe they don't. Maybe they want to look edgy. I had a poll in my Facebook group asking people how they'd like to be perceived, and one person ticked scary. Like, people to be scared of me. So, I mean, you know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I do think that we shifted from like all the trends that were going on to like everyone needs to dress harmonious. This is the goal. This is the ultimate thing. But what I really think is interesting, and we can talk about this a little bit more, is the concept of harmonious. Like, do you understand what it means to dress harmonious? And do you want to apply that to every outfit you wear? Sometimes you don't. But having the knowledge to be able to do that is freeing. And this is where some of the older style systems get into place, right? We have your Kibbe's and your Kitcheners and traditional color analysis. What was your experience with those? Did you find them inspiring? Like, how did they play into your own journey? Like, how you took your system and kind of pushed it even further?
Yeah, I would say, like, of all the different systems that I've explored, and I've explored probably most of them, I can't think of one that wasn't helpful in some way. I mean, I'm someone who loves to constantly learn stuff. I found something in all of them, and I'm, you know, quite a big fan of David Kibbe. I'm not sort of saying, oh, you know, his system is crap. I'm not at all. I would say out of everything, I found his system the most helpful. And there was a lot of information in there. I think some of this stuff we sort of intuitively know. Like, I knew I'm taller, I'm 5'9", so I sort of knew that I looked better in certain longer lengths and things like that, but I didn't really understand why. I didn't have the language for why, you know. So David Kibbe introduced me to the whole idea of the vertical line and elongation, all that stuff. So I think all of these systems have something to offer. And it's interesting what you said about sort of learning the foundations and then doing what you want with it. Because I had a client recently, and this is probably my best feedback I've had. She came to me for a silhouette ID analysis. She's about 5'10". In the Kibbe world, she's one of the tall types, and she's a summer, but she likes wearing black, and she's into the goth scene. So she was like, put something together for me. And that was a wonderful time. She was sort of like, I'm not going to give up black. I actually love challenges like that, so that was really fun. And then her feedback was, I'd given her this sort of foundation that made sense, and she can go out and sort of create with that. That is sort of really what I want to do. Like, it's not really for me to sit here and say, you over there in Germany or Australia should wear this because I told you to. It's more like sort of, this is what's going on with your body geometry, your vibe. We can sort of know what the sort of lines and textures and things like that and colour that will light us up and sort of look amazing, but then we can sort of like interpret it in a way that means something to us, and also we might interpret it differently depending on what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Especially with the use of colour, sometimes we might want to use colour like armour. Like, I'm obsessed with black. I'm a summer, but like, I'm obsessed with black. I wore non-black just for you. But like, for me, black can be sort of like an armour. Even if it's not your most flattering colour against your skin, it's symbolic. It's instantly sort of pulled together. It says I'm serious or whatever, you know, or I'm edgy or whatever it is you're trying to say.
Yeah, it can be kind of like an anchor point too, you know, and how it plays with other things. I think that's the beauty of learning about style and kind of deep diving and learning about it is like you learn how to break the rules in an effective manner so you get the results you actually want. If you want to look edgy, you want to look a little bit more like armor, you have the tools to do that. But I want to circle back really quickly to the storytelling concept because I was thinking about this just now and it popped into my head. When you write, there's like a big thing about showing and not telling. And I think that style does that so well. Like, as a writer, you don't want to be like, the world is dark and dreary. You want to show them by describing the landscape and not having a character be like, it's very cold out tonight and the moon is dark, you know, like you want to paint the picture. And I think that's what style does so well. And there's all these little details you can weave into the storytelling of your style that allows someone to look at you and it's showing them who you are, right? Whether it's like a little vintage earring or a cascading ruffle sticking out from underneath a skirt, you know, that gives it a little more elongated or celestial vibe coming through. What do you think about that? Like, how does your system really customize it to your clients? Like, how do they break out of the boxes?
I love how you put that, actually. Because I suppose the way I see it, when I'm doing an analysis for someone, so if I sort of focus maybe on the silhouette idea and how that works, the basics are probably I think like page 2 of the report. Like the report is massive, it's like 40 pages or something. So about page 2 of the report, they're going to get the breakdown of which silhouette IDs are in their blend. So in my system, you can be celestial, sleek, stately, luxuriant, delicate, fresh, timeless. Of course, timeless.
I had little notes. So.
Thank you. You can be any of these silhouette IDs, but pretty much everyone is a blend. So most people have at least 2. If you look back at Kibbe, he obviously has types like soft dramatic, which is dramatic and romantic. So he has some blends of 2 different types. But in mine, often people are 3 different types. That's the first stage, is like sort of telling the person, figuring that out, like this percentage of this and this percentage of that. With that done, then we sort of get deeper and deeper into it. So that's like step 1. And then what do we do with this information? Because someone could, for example, have a high percentage of timeless in my system, which is someone who's got a lot of symmetry and is very balanced and overall quite moderate. They may have that, but their personality or even just sort of what they're aiming for with their aesthetic, that may be too boring for them. If I just gave them generic recommendations based on them having a lot of symmetry, this is when we sort of dive deeper and they fill in a detailed intake form, so I have an idea of what they're going for. Quite a lot of people have the other elements done as well, like the colour and the archetype. So that gives me a lot more to work with. And then we build something that's just about them, not just about, you're this type of my system, so this is what you should wear, and you're timeless, so get the blazer and pencil skirt out. And I had one client who, before she booked, she said to me, please don't let me be timeless, because her whole style is like edgy, she's gender fluid. She's like, please do not give me something that looks like Kate Middleton. I analysed her, she was predominantly timeless. But but that didn't mean that she had to wear blazers at all. So it's really about building that story for that person. Then there's like a Pinterest board that each person gets, which is sort of like a mood board, which is just sort of showing ideas, colours, textures, celebrity inspo.
There's so much nuance to it. I love that. Can you talk a little bit about like what you would do with someone who was like, don't give me time? Because it's hard when clients come in and they're like, I'm fine with anything except bright winter. And you're like, oh no. Or whatever. In my experience, you have to hold their hands and walk them through it and figure out, how do you take the space information and customize it? And I love that your system does that so well. You really build their story. You really help them build their character so that the whole narrative is complete and we feel like this person is showing up to the world how they want it to be. So can you talk about like what you would give to someone who's like, I am, gender fluid and quirky and I love all these interesting elements, and you give me timeless? Like, how do you blend those two together, where the nuance that you provide?
That particular client was one of my favourite clients because it was a challenge, because especially when she did turn out, she had a lot of symmetry, which, these are traits that are sort of prized by a lot of people. So, people were like, no. So I made sure to really respect her preferences, but at the same time, be honest. I couldn't go and say to her, you're asymmetrical and whatever. But we looked at it as that's the sort of foundational part, but what she does with it is sort of up to her. So being very symmetrical and moderate in my system, it doesn't mean you have to be shut into this idea of you can only wear very moderate, understated clothing. Like with her, we looked at it as sort of this base that meant she could sort of really veer in a lot of different directions because she had that balance. So she could play up this bit or that bit. And there's also a concept I have in my system called aesthetic bandwidth, which is about how much sort of detail and boldness and attitude a person can take based on their sort of face and energy. And hers was high, like her aesthetic bandwidth was high, even though she was predominantly timeless. So she could really go in with all kinds of quirky details and things like that. So it worked out, yeah.
And it's like finding where you can push the boundaries, the right boundaries to push. Because if someone has super timeless in your system, predominantly they're going to have that symmetry. But with the high style aesthetic complexity, they're able to like nudge it this way and be like, okay, I'm going to keep this part more streamlined, but here's where I can add in my identity. And I think that's so interesting. So do you want to talk a little bit about your style energy archetypes too? Because I feel like that really helps tie everything together. And it's such a personal aspect to it. It's not just saying, okay, you're a dramatic and you wear sleek stuff and this is what you do. You're saying you can be dramatic, but then you can have this completely different energy that's feeding into it. And this is why this short, funky cap sleeve, like itty bitty outfit is looking killer on you, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with the sort of style energy archetypes. Obviously people book consultations as a standalone sometimes, so not everyone has 3 things done. But with that, it gives you sort of an insight into sort of how that client lives their life, like how they move in the world, what matters to them. And that obviously influences how we choose to dress massively. Mm-hmm. You know, because someone could have a certain size eyes or lips or be a certain height, but that's so not the be all and end all, is it? Because that just sort of tells you in a very sort of technical and rigid way. That sort of says, right, you're this height and you've got this sort of face shape and eyes, so these things are going to suit you. And it doesn't mean those things won't suit them, but to me that's almost like the foundations of the house. That's not the whole building. That's not the sort of the decoration and the artwork and all of that. So the style archetypes are so important. And one of my favourite clients who did all three, when we do them, we do the style energy last after we've done the other bits. So when we got to her style energy archetype consultation, it was like everything started to get a lot deeper and make more sense. She was talking about, and this was just sort of like quite an offhand comment, she mentioned that, because I asked people to sort of send a video of them walking, but we also talk about how they walk and things like that and what other people think of them. And she had mentioned that her son had made fun of the way she walks because she had like this really sort of full-on way of walking. And she had like a little anecdote about when she was a child and her dad was sort of encouraging her to walk properly and, you know, walk with purpose. And she actually had quite a lot of the warrior archetype in her. Mm-hmm. That was sort of like the entry point into sort of looking into the warrior archetype, which is one of the archetypes in my system. And like the way she walked and her sort of philosophy towards life, it was just, it just came together.
That's
and
so
then,
cool.
Like that client, she had timeless in her blend with the warrior archetype, and that client also had the outlaw, the rebel, and the queen. Mm-hmm. So that brings a whole other layer to it. You can't just sort of wear moderate, safe clothes if you've got that sort of blend. You know, there's more to it. Like you can wear the beautiful tailoring, but you're gonna maybe have like a touch of leather with it, or you know, it's gonna be a little bit of attitude and stuff like that going on. Yeah.
I love that because like it's someone who has dove into all the systems and tried to figure out all the different options. And in one, like in Kibbe, I think it's safe to say I'm a flamboyant natural. But if you were to ask my friends like how I move through the world, most of them are like, you're just like an energetic pixie. You're just like bouncing around, moving really quickly, and you have a bounce to your stuff. So it's really interesting to see some of the attributes that go into this energy. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? So it's like your walk, kind of how you move, like anything else that you're deep diving into to figure those layers out? Because it sounds like it's pretty customized.
Yeah, it's pretty customized. So it's the sort of physical things like the mannerisms, the way a person walks, the sort of clothing and accessories they naturally, intuitively gravitate towards. But it's also more than that, like what matters to them in the world. Some of the questions I ask them might be sort of, what are you most proud of? Or what are you not happy with? Or what's something that you've done in life that you feel utterly horrible about? Or what are you most proud of? You know, just also, I mean, the conversation obviously flows. So all those sort of different things come about, sort of, you know, what do you do for a living and how do you feel about it and what would you do if you didn't have to earn money? All sorts of things like that. And so much is really revealed about that person's inner architecture because we explore the outer with the silhouette ID and about sort of what's going on in the inner world. I mean, that has to be at least as important. With these three different layers, it's quite hard to separate them. So if someone comes to me, for example, just to get their colours done, I'm not going to ignore their bone structure. Like in the intake form, I'm going to get the flavour of their personality. So it's all very much connected. And I've noticed with the intake forms that go with it, some people have been like, I can't answer any of these questions. I've never really thought about anything this deeply. Whereas others will write you a whole essay, thousands of words.
I know that well. It's either like one word or 2,000. There's nowhere in between. Very rarely is there anyone in between.
And I think also with the style archetype, some of it's not obvious physically. It's more in how someone lives their life. So one of my favourite archetypes is the outlaw or the rebel. And I have some of that in my own blend. But the way I actually dress and sort of behave socially, I don't think people would sort of think outlaw. But even in like launching this system, that is a very outlaw thing to do because it's the disruptor kind of thing, right? And that is very much part of the outlaw energy.
I love that because it's like it's an undercurrent. It's not like, oh, you're outlaw, so now you need to wear leather and heavy things. Right. It's like, no, this is an undercurrent. This is part of your personality. And there's little touches, like back to the storytelling aspect of show, not tell. Like, how could we give you a little touch so that like, and it could be so subtle. It could be like, I'm spitballing here, so tell me if this is wrong, but like some chunky ring that's unexpected or a little sharp or something where, you know, like you're in a board meeting and then they just write like, and then there was this really strong ring or the ring hit the table and you're like, all of a sudden there's a focus point there where you're like, oh, okay, you break the rules rules a little bit. It's just this nod that tells so much about the person with one small detail. And I think that's where some systems go a little too heavy-handed. They're like, if you're classic, you need to wear a button up and a pencil skirt and keep everything in moderate lengths. It's like, that's such a 101 version of what it means. And what I love about your style is a system that Poeticize Your Presence is that you are making it poetry. You're making it nuanced and subtle. It's wonderful. I also want to talk about your colors because we kind of jumped from the silhouette ID to the style energy. But I know in your full package, typically the full story package, you typically do a custom color palette in the middle. And for anyone who doesn't know, you have been doing so much work to break some of the stereotypes and lack of inclusivity in color analysis. Like, I always admire your posts in the Facebook groups and your own group. They're wonderful. I think they really challenge a lot of what's wrong in color analysis. So do you just want to talk about like where you started with color analysis and how you created your very unique offering with custom color palettes?
Sure. So my history with color analysis goes back to being a child when somehow I got hold of the book Color Me Beautiful.
Oh, classic.
I guess I got it from the library. This is before the days of Kindles like that. So. And like it became like my Bible because as a child I was very creative, I was into writing and art and stuff like that. So I guess it really talked to me. And so I got hold of this book and I was reading it religiously. I was probably, I don't know, not 12 maybe, something like that. I can't remember exactly how it words it, but it just sort of obviously has summer, winter, spring and autumn. And it says as a woman of colour, you're winter. I think that's what it said, or maybe you could be in autumn as well. But I didn't have any reason to challenge it. So I just sort of thought, oh, okay, I'm a winter. And it said you should wear black and whatever other colours, primary colours, things like that. And I remember, like, at that age as a child, I wasn't allowed to wear black. I don't know if there's some cultural thing. I was just always told by the adults, black is not appropriate for a child. So as soon as I had my little part-time job and had my money, I went out and bought all these black clothes. That was when I fell in love with black. So I started wearing black, and I was living as a winter. And, you know, life carried on. I was wearing, like, bright red lipstick. I mean, not ideal, but, you know. And then, after I graduated and all that stuff, when I think literally with my first paycheck and a proper job, I paid for a colour analysis. So I'd have been, by now, in my early 20s. And I remember I went to this colour analysis, and it's so long ago that I can't remember exactly what she said, but I remember her saying, I definitely wasn't a winter. And I remember her giving me the results and some little, I guess it was like a swatch. And I remember thinking, well, this was a load of crap. Because I was so convinced I was a winter. But after that, I remember I started buying, because I'm pretty sure she actually said it was a summer, because even though I thought this was a load of crap, I started buying these colours that she'd recommended. Like, I remember I had this heathered, sort of muted purple coat that I bought, which is exactly what she told me to wear in terms of colour. And I moved to New York just after this, and I remember people would stop me on the subway and just be like, they would just be asking me about this coat. So I thought it was a really amazing coat, but it was probably because it was literally like my A1 colour to wear. So I was buying all these like random summer colours, even though I thought black was best. And so I was wearing summer colours, and then life went on. And then it wasn't until about 5 years ago, I was at a family event. I remember I was holding hands with one of my brothers, and I remember just like looking at our hands, I guess, and his hand just seemed sort of like glowing and bronze, and mine just looked grayed out. I was like, why does my hand look like his? And so, something just sort of went bing, you're a soft summer. So maybe that woman had told me I was a soft summer all those years ago, because then that's when I just sort of jumped into all this Facebook stuff. Like literally I woke up one morning and thought, because I was going to go and get a checkup to see if I was anemic, like that's how annoying I was. And then, so I joined all these like soft summer groups and colour analysis groups, and it was interesting. I eventually went out and got analysed, but I started wearing soft summer colours and learning about it. And the responses I got in the group was so polarised, because there aren't many women of colour or people of colour in those groups, and there were even less than sort of 4 or 5 years ago. Some women in the groups would be like, oh, I love your post so much, it's so lovely to see a woman of colour who's a summer. But some people would just be like, you're just delusional, you're just embarrassing yourself. Like, it was like really, really full on. There was a lot of gatekeeping. And that, I guess that sort of drove me to go and get analysed by professionals. I went and got draped in person. I wasn't surprised by the result. I mean, I guess some of the group members would be, but I was told as a soft summer. And then I was sort of back in the groups, like, oh, you know, I've been confirmed as a soft summer. People were literally like inboxing me saying, you're not a summer. People like really weirdly invested, and I ended up getting another colour analysis, this time online and virtual one, soft summer. So I was thinking like somewhat rare for people of colour to be draped as summers, but clearly, I mean, and then I even had a third one, soft summer. So I was like, okay, I mean, case closed.
I don't even think we have the data to say that. No one has compiled enough data in any one system to say this is rare or this isn't. And I mean, I know the way we look at it inside is like, you have to drape the person. Like, you can't just guess your way to the season. You can take clues for what they're wearing and be like, oh, okay. But it's that comparison that makes things really light up. You can be like, they look good in that color. But then you put a better color on it and you're like, wow. How could we ever have liked that color? This one's so much better. But it is kind of crazy. I remember some of your posts back when you were talking about it, and people would get so heated about it. And color analysis has become something that people get very attached to and feel very strongly about telling you that you're wrong. And it's crazy that you had to go and redrape just for yourself to be like, no, I'm a soft summer. I mean, you wear these colors so well. I can't imagine anyone saying you're not a soft summer. So you're living as a soft summer.
Yeah.
What's it like? Where are the holes? What's the next step for you?
Honestly, like looking back at some of the sort of stuff I was wearing when I first was confirmed as a soft summer, it's actually embarrassing to me because it just didn't look like me. You can have colours that actually suit your skin and your colouring, and that's me with soft summer. It just didn't really feel like me, because I remember in one of the groups I'd gone from wearing all black and the red lipstick to, I remember I had this sort of little powder blue suede jacket on and this light coloured lipstick. I just don't look like me. I mean, it looked nice in harmony with my skin, but I can't even look at that photo.
I had that same experience where I had some bright spring colors and I had put on like a pink that was bright spring, and I'd just be like, who is that person? Like, it's just not me, which is why I think you're taking it a step further and customizing things. That's so important, because it's more than just the colors. It's how do those colors work with all these other elements, your silhouette, your energy. I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
No, that's fine. No, I think you're so right, because again, with colours, it's not just about these are the colours that look the absolute best against your skin, because I'd be in like powder blue, you know, honestly. I mean, other things like what do you enjoy wearing and what suits your personality and your body as well. I remember I just felt like a tall ice cream sundae. I was wearing all these super soft, slightly light colours, and some of the people in the groups are going, now you look nice, you look approachable, and you look like someone I'd want to approach. I remember just going, I don't know that I even want to look approachable.
You have that warrior undercurrent. You don't want to look approachable. You want a little bit more nudge.
Right. So I was doing all that and sort of decided that I was a sort of deep soft summer. There is kind of such a thing. It's not really recognised in style. What I'm wearing today actually could qualify as sort of, you know, a deeper summer. And that was a point where I felt like myself. And I think that's really important. I felt like I was cosplaying at sort of God knows what in the standard soft summer colours. So I started thinking there's more to this. There's more to our use of colour. And sort of in these groups, I used to attract what I call, and in my own, I have like my own colour analysis group on Facebook, I used to attract what I call the lipstick police. Because one of my sort of signature things, like I wear a brightish lipstick, and I get all these people just sort of saying, oh, you know, I would like to see you without that lipstick, or I see the lipstick before I see you.
Oh, I have such a bone to pick with the people who say, I see the lipstick or the color before you. We're not used to color as a society. Everyone uses that term wrong. The amount of times I'm like, I noticed that color before you. I'm like, what do you actually mean by that?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The sort of slight outrage that people have.
Yeah, they really get spicy about it. My goodness.
Yeah. All of that was going on, and I was sort of just getting on with my life. I was like slipping back into wearing black, but with what I would call a summer lipstick. It's not everyone's idea. Then I started thinking about the concept of a dark summer. I mean, that exists in some systems, like House of Colour has a dark summer. But I found with their dark summer and a few others, the colours were darker, but they were also quite saturated, because I had to accept I'm not a very saturated. I can handle depth personally, but I can't handle bright colours. And so I thought, what's missing here, what I'm not seeing anywhere, is a palette that's deep, the depth and the sort of richness, but it's still very muted. Like, I'm not really seeing that here, and that's sort of where this concept of midnight summer, which is in my system as well. So I'm like part midnight summer, which is these beautiful, dark, moody colours that, they're just as muted as standard soft summer colours, but they have more depth. Standard soft summer can go somewhat deep.
But you're taking the frameworks of these color palettes and saying, how do we find your little pocket in this? And how can we push this boundaries? Because, seasonal color analysis is basically supposed to be a rough outline of where you can push. It's not meant to be like the rule book, the rigid, like, these are the only 30 colors you can wear. If you wear 31, you're not in palette, And what I love about your system is this idea of blends as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like how you created these blends?
With all 3 layers in my system, each one can be a blend. You could be a standalone something, but you can also be a blend. So, for example, with the colour, just to look at the summers, I have the midnight summer, road night summer, bluebell summer, and then there's sort of like a much lighter summer as well. So someone could be sort of 2 different types of summer. They could be a summer bordering on an autumn where they're actually both a summer and an autumn, for example. As I started to sort of put that together, everything fell into place. And a lot of the clients I get for colour analysis have been analysed elsewhere. For example, they might have been told by one analyst they're a spring and by another one they're a summer. And sometimes what will happen is they are actually both. Like they can sort of get colours from both. I'm not the only person who does this. I suppose if you look at, just for you to look at John Kitchener's work, and I haven't been analysed by him, but I have friends who have, and sometimes someone will be part subtle blended and part something else. I think the idea that someone is just this type and they have to fit into that type, some people do, or some people fit neatly enough into it, but not everyone will. And I think I get quite a lot of people who just didn't fit in very easily into one particular type, and then the palette I build for them is a custom palette. Yeah,
so in your system, I just want to clarify, you could be a bluebell summer and have a citrine spring option in there. Or would there be certain ones that would be more commonly found together in your experience?
Yeah. There are certain ones that would be more commonly found together because, like, for example, if someone was a bluebell summer, which is very sort of English rosy summer garden colours, it would be hard to reconcile that with citrine spring, which is beautiful citrusy oranges and zesty yellows and stuff. Yeah, I guess anything in life is possible, but they're more likely to sort of maybe have that summer going on and then perhaps lean into autumn and have some colours from one of the autumn palettes, or winter. Those are more likely to be in a blend.
So interesting. Yeah. So your clients, I think, really probably benefit from you giving them permission to break the rules a little bit, right? Like people dive into the style systems, the bigger ones like the Kibbe's and the Kitcheners, and they get a lot of information and then they test it out in this very narrow sense of like, these are my rules, which rules can be helpful. Yeah. But how do you think your system helps them be free of that and like break those rules? Like what about your system frees people?
I think some people do sort of respond to getting the analysis from me as if they now have permission. Obviously they don't need more permission to do what they want, but
of course, but sometimes it's nice to have that like professional say, it's okay if you wear this, like you're free to do it. It's just a mental hurdle sometimes we have.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful because, I was talking through earlier about the process of doing a silhouette analysis. So it's like, these are your types, this is your blend, these are your percentages, these are the sort of fabric weights and finishes that will look good on you, but then like, let's dive into what you do with this as a person, like how you take this out into the world, into your real life and what you do with it. Maybe someone wants clothes for the office or they're postpartum and they want to sort of, build a wardrobe for that time in their life, or they just want to like start again, they've divorced their husband or something and they just want a whole new image. So we've got to take that into account rather than sort of say, right, you've been typed as this, you have to wear this. And then if you don't, getting the sort of fashion police saying, oh, but that's not honouring your vertical, that's not doing this or that. So it's kind of like saying, this is what the foundation is. I don't want to use the word rules. This is sort of what the foundation is. But like there are so many ways you can work with that and so many ways you can apply your own personality, your own needs. Because if you're someone who has high celestial, which is one of my favourite types, you look good in kind of quite wispy fabrics and sort of long, narrow drape, but say you've got a toddler that you're sort of running around after, you could like trip over and fall, and you're not going to want to like keep having everything dry clean, so we have to sort of look at the real life as well.
Trying to make a snack with celestial bat wing sleeves might be a little tricky. You're like, there's carrots in my shirt now.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be reasonable, right?
So do you want to talk about how one of your clients, like kind of a success story of how they were like liberated by your ability, your system, and how it helped them, how much more inclusive your style system is and how much more nuanced it is?
One client I really enjoyed working with, I mentioned her a little bit earlier. She came to me, I think she'd had her essences done, but that was it. And she's really tall, so in the Kibi system, she had sort of landed on flamboyant natural for herself. She just sort of came to me and wanted the silhouette ID done. She was interested in sort of work outfits, but also she had wanted to bring this whole goth culture piece into her wardrobe, and she's a summer, right? So I typed her in my system. Part of her blend was stately in my system, which is probably my favorite type. It's someone who has a majestic presence. They tend to be tall. I suppose that the sort of nearest fit in the Kibi system would be a flamboyant natural, but I wanted to put like a different spin on it and have just more attractive language. I don't know many women who enjoy being described as blunt and white.
Yeah. The amount of conversations I've had with people when I say I have Kibi with who know me in real life, and they're like, "But you're like small," and I'm like, "No, I have it though."
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting language for sure.
Yeah. So this person came to me. She had been sort of trying on flamboyant natural, and she'd been sort of dressing in. She hadn't been to Kibi himself, but she was dressing in, sort of what the groups advised a flamboyant natural to wear. And after she came for the consultation, she actually said that she felt, when she said that I was really kind, that my language was really encouraging, so that was like the best feedback. Because I'm not just going to write you a bunch of poetry and give you ideas that aren't practical, but at the same time I'm going to respect the vulnerability it takes to even send pictures of yourself to be typed, and also your sort of personal needs in the real world. So she had the silhouette ID done. It took ages to get feedback. If someone's silent, you think, oh my God, maybe they hate it, right? So then she gave me feedback and was like, oh wow, this has really, really helped me. Then she gradually started sort of like applying some of the advice. And what I liked was that I could see she was having fun again, right? Because she had been told she had to wear, like she mustn't break the vertebrae. She was wearing some very long things, which, she had that height, so it looked nice on her, but now she's wearing short legs and showing off those long legs and doing all sorts of stuff that technically you're not supposed to do in systems like Kibi. And what I love most about it is I can see she's having fun.
I love that. That's so important in client work, is understanding that it's going to be a journey for them, and that if you can give them the tools to play for themselves, to create their own vision, that's like the biggest gift you can give someone as a stylist, right? Like, if we think about it, Kibi is kind of a paint by numbers almost, or it used to be, whatever he's turned it into now. But like originally it was a little bit like, here's the picture, here are the paints you need. You're going to paint this picture. You're going to fill it in, and everyone's is going to look very similar with like little subtle changes, but because we all have different technique, but everyone's kind of painting the same picture. You're like, here's your colors. Here's your paintbrush. Here's a mood. Here's some words to be inspired by. But what you put on that painting is completely up to you. And they try things and they play and they get like creatively inspired because you're giving them all the tools they need without the strict, this is what the picture looks like at the end of the day. Yeah. And I think that's really, really freeing.
That's key. One of the forgotten elements is go out and have fun, right? It shouldn't feel like a prison.
No, it should be an education that allows you to expand past it, to take this information and tweak it to be your exact character. You're not writing character A for every single person who comes sees you with this exact blend. Like each character you create, each story you tell is really personalized to that individual. And I think that's so powerful.
I have a sort of phrase that I keep in mind, which is, the particularities contain the poetry. So it's like the things that make a person unique. Often the things that they'll come to me and they'll sort of say, oh, I hate my this, or my shoulders are too wide, or I'm not confident with my weight, or whatever it might be. But those are often like the things that contain the poetry, because we're all completely unique, even sets of twins. So
it's just embracing your own presence in the world. That's what I really like, your idea of presence too, that you take up space, you create your own story. So for listeners who are interested in your system, obviously we'll talk about your full story package, but is there a way for them to kind of dive into your system and play with it? Like, what would you recommend that they do?
So I have a Facebook group for Poeticize Your Presence. It's sort of got people who are just interested in playing with the system and trying to sort of DIY it, people who are clients, different challenges and stuff like that we post in there. So that's a really good place to, and sometimes people guessing a celebrity's blend. So that's a really great place to learn more about the system. There's my website, which has a breakdown of the different types. Like, I'm sort of still in the process actually, but there's like a deep dive into each silhouette identity that goes really, really deep. Which will give someone a really good idea of whether they might have that type in their blend or not. There's a Pinterest board as well that has sort of images for each different type. So those are the best resources for learning more about it.
Do you think people should go off what they're drawn to or expand on what they know works? Like if I was to say, I look good in stately lines, maybe I try stately first. Like how should people pick and choose? Or is it kind of make your own adventure?
Yeah, I very much believe in what I call line testing. So, trying on many different types of silhouettes, basically. And the right silhouette or the right blend of silhouettes, I mean, obviously it's going to look good, whatever looking good means to you, right? Because it might mean something else to someone else, but also it should feel good. When you have the right blend or the right silhouettes on you, there's a feeling of like you exhale, like you just feel comfortable in your clothes, whereas other things will just feel so wrong. That's a really big clue. How you feel as a human being in these, I totally advocate going to a department store or something, just like trying on loads and loads of different clothes and just sort of seeing what hits and what doesn't and what the pattern is there.
Yeah.
Like with me, for example, like I feel if I wear short skirts or dresses, I just feel wrong. If it looks like I couldn't afford clothes that were long enough. But that's, not every tall woman is going to have that. So for some, they will feel out of place in longer lines.
I love that. And I think it's really important to focus on how you feel or if something feels off to like listen to yourself that way. So do you just want to give us a breakdown of what your full story package is?
Yes, absolutely. So the full story package is probably my most popular service, actually. It's all 3 layers of what I offer. So it's the silhouette ID, which we've discussed, the custom color analysis, which comes with a completely custom color palette and a long report, and a Pinterest board, and then the style energy archetypes consultation. So it's all 3 of those in one. And by the time, the client and I have worked through all of that, we get to know each other pretty well. So it feels like a real sort of journey. It feels like a narrative journey. And then we come to the end of it with the style energy archetype. Everything comes together. So it's like you're handing them the book of their style story.
Their full story. You leave no stone unturned. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah, we will make sure there's no social good.
We will make sure that's in the links and everyone can find your beautiful website, Poeticize Your Presence, and the full story package. I like to end on kind of a fun question. So what's one piece in your own wardrobe that really tells the story of you?
So I would say it's this pair of boots, crazy boots that I've had. I must have had them for more than 10 years actually. They're like these thigh-length boots, they're suede and with this sort of shilling along the side. Every time I wear them, someone's like, people react really strangely to these boots. Like, oh my God, your boots. Like, people are really freaked out because they're really over the top. But they're also, I suppose in terms of my silhouette ID blend, I have sleek, celestial and timeless. They're very long and they're very sleek, but there's also the element of the unexpected in them. Like with this sort of shearling bit, and they're just so fantastically over the top. So I think they tell the story not just of my body geometry, but of me as a person.
That
because
mood, that energy.
In my archetypes, I have some of the outlaw in there. I also have a little bit of jester.
Okay.
I love it, yeah. So the jester is just going to do their own thing. And just, like, they're going to be like, they might be quite conservatively dressed, and then they've got some kind of crazy footwear. Or they've just got something going on that's unexpected.
That is the perfect answer. I love it. You'll have to show us all these boots because now we're all curious. I just want to say it was so wonderful to talk to you. I think what you're doing with your style system is beautiful. You've broken a lot of the closed-mindedness in the color analysis space. And so thank you so much for coming on. It's been a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Okay, until next time.